Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 24 rookie rankings with tiers. It's been a week since the scouting combine, and Joe and I are prepared to give you our top 24.
Hike!
So, Joe, why don't you start us off? Who do you got in tier number 5? This is a superflex format that we're thinking about these tiers, by the way.
Yep. And tier number 5 at number 24, I've got Jatavion Sanders, 23, Ricky Pearsall, 22, Michael Penix, 21, Xavier Leggett, and at 20, Marshawn Lloyd.
Okay, so 24, I've got quarterback Bo Nix, 23, wide receiver Troy Franklin, 22, running back Jalen Wright, 21, running back Jonathan Brooks, and number 20, wide receiver Malachi Corley. So, Joe, looking at our lists here, I do not have Jatavion Sanders in my top 24, nor do I have looking at your list here, Joe, I do not have Jatavion Sanders or Marshawn Lloyd in my top 24. Do you have any? Are there any of my guys that you don't have in your top 24?
I don't have Malachi Corley, and I don't have Bo Nix.
Okay, and that's it.
I've got everyone else. Those are the two.
Okay, so two guys and two guys. I the rest I have. Sanders, I think, was a disappointment for me in the combine. Hard to put him in the top 24. I mean, you could say just based on the talent, he could perform, like an Isaiah Likely, who didn't perform well at the combine with the athletic testing. So is that kind of your logic there, is why you felt Sanders was worthy of the top 24?
Yeah, I put some stock into what I see at the combine, but I don't base everything solely. I mean, I think, I try to focus more on the body of work of the player, how they look. I mean, this guy in college simply doesn't drop the ball. He's gone 67 targets without a drop, which is pretty impressive. And I like to see that from the tight end. So this guy can catch. I feel like he's athletic enough, and tight end position, especially for fantasy, they can be a difference maker. And I think he has potential to be a difference maker at the tight end position.
Yeah, I think two guys I had in here that did not perform at the combine was Malachi Corley and Jonathan Brooks. A lot of people have Jonathan Brooks as their RB1. I'm not sold on that just yet. I think landing spot is going to matter immensely for running backs, especially with all these free agent running backs we talked about recently, and where are they going to go? So that could change drastically. I think Corley could be a lot higher had he performed in the combine. The guy is extremely talented, in my view, and very productive at Western Kentucky. So to me, I feel like he's a guy that could have been on the rise, and I like him a lot. But it seems like you didn't like him as much as I do.
Yeah, I think it was just more so. I think I liked other players, and you're probably right. I think especially being a smaller school guy, I feel like he would have gotten some more recognition there if he actually did, work out at the combine and go up against some of these other guys from larger schools.
Yeah, I was very disappointed with Bo Nix. I almost didn't put him in my top 24. You didn't. I just think that he's worthy of having there because if he does get drafted by your Broncos or somebody like that, he will be a starter. And in a super flex league, if you have a starter, that's pretty valuable. So I don't know if he'll ever be elite, but he's a guy that I think, obviously, depending on where he goes, if he goes in the first round or not, his value could change drastically for me.
Yeah, definitely. I just left him out just because, even though he's potentially a starter, like you said, I don't think he's going to be that great, of a fantasy guy. But I guess, that we are talking about from a super flex perspective, and could he be a worthy stash in case he could be your quarterback too? I don't think you're ever going to want to have Bo Nix as your QB1.
Well, it seems like you weren't very impressed with Penix either because you have him in this tier 5.
No, and not that I'm not impressed with him. I mean, I expected him to do very well at the combine. I mean, the guy's accurate. He knows how to throw. I just worry about from an NFL level when he faces some pressure. And since he doesn't really have the running ability and the athletic ability there, I just think that limits his upside for fantasy.
Yeah, I think one guy you were surprised I had on here so late was Troy Franklin. I just think he took a real dive for me in the combine. Looked real sloppy, and I thought he was gonna. I could be wrong about this. I thought he was gonna be taller. I thought in Oregon they had him like at 6'3". He ended up being 6'1". He's kind of more of a lanky guy. I know, to me, again, landing spot's going to matter quite a bit, but I just think there are a lot of receivers that are super impressive that leapfrogged him. I had him at number 9 in our way too early mock draft. So as you can tell, I mean, he took a huge dive for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's again, I don't know how much stake I want to put into the combine. I mean, um, he's got the speed and the production, that he had in college as well. And I think I'm going to trust that a little more. I mean, I have him, later on.
All right, Joseph, who do you got in tier number 4?
In tier number 4 at 19, I've got Roman Wilson, 18, Blake Corum, 17, Jalen Wright, and at 16, I've got Keon Coleman.
Okay, for number 19, I've got Roman Wilson. 18, wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. 17, Keon Coleman. 16, Blake Corum. 15, Xavier Legette. And number 14, Trey Benson. So I definitely have a little bit of a bigger tier than you for tier number 4, but I can tell that you and I have a lot of similarities here. Up through tier 4, I obviously have Xavier Legette a lot higher than you do, but Roman Wilson is pretty much we're right at the same pace at 19. Blake Corum and Keon Coleman are right in this range. You've got Jalen Wright higher than me. I got him lower. Ricky Pearsall I got higher. You got him lower, and then you elected to have not say Trey Benson yet. So talking about Xavier Legette, you had him in tier 5. I have him in tier 4. To me, he's got that bigger build, AJ Brown kind of DK Metcalf type of build. So to me, I was very impressive. I thought I was very impressed by his overall athleticism and his speed. Because the question is, can he create separation? Is that why you're kind of concerned about him from a separation standpoint?
Yeah, somewhat. I think he's just an interesting prospect. It's also things of, I just like some of these other guys, a little better as well. But you're not wrong. I mean, he's 6'1", 219 pounds. I do like him. But yeah, I mean, he's also, 23. I feel like he's a little bit older for a rookie wide receiver coming in. You usually don't see guys break out as a fifth-year senior, but that's kind of what he did. So, I mean, that could also help him hit the ground running faster, I guess, as well, being that he's a little older, more mature. But yeah, I feel like those are some of the reasons I had him a little lower than you.
Now, I am a little surprised that you have Jalen Wright over the Michigan man of Blake Corum. Was that just purely based on you are intrigued by his speed?
Yeah, I think he's got, his speed is why I got him higher. You're definitely wrong. Just more of those breakout runs. I think Blake Corum's a really solid back. I think he can catch better than what he was able to show at Michigan, being that they weren't really a pass happy team. But yeah, I think Jalen Wright's ceiling is better just with more breakout runs and bigger runs.
One guy who really dropped for me, and it looked like he dropped for you. I'm trying to remember where you had him, but I know you had him in your top 12, which is Keon Coleman. Obviously he didn't perform well in the 40. He did have the fastest gauntlet, but I think he looked sloppy in the drills. So for me, he was a faller, and as a result, he's fallen here in the tiers. Do you feel similar to me?
Yeah. I think too, they're just some of the guys that, um, perform better in the combine and give you a little bit, I feel like possibly just more athleticism. I mean, Keon Coleman's a big guy. I think he's going to out jump people, but I get people that are a little bit better route runners and probably can get open easier than him, put those guys ahead of him.
All right, Joe. So who do you got in tier number 3?
In tier 3 at 15, I've got Lad McConkey. At 14, I've got Jonathan Brooks. 13, Troy Franklin. 12, Trey Benson. 11, Xavier Worthy.
Okay. Number 13, I've got quarterback J.J. McCarthy. 12, wide receiver Xavier Worthy. 11, wide receiver Lab McConkey. 10, wide receiver Adonai Mitchell. And number 9, quarterback Michael Penix. Well, Joe, looks like you're going to have to catch up to me in another tier because you were at 11 and I'm at number 9. I saw your reaction with Penix. I better explain myself. I think Penix is the super flex format that we're thinking about this. And I think Penix, if he can, it's a big if he can have a clean pocket, I think he's a very accurate thrower of the ball. And I think that what we saw at the combine, I thought he was the most impressive quarterback there. I already had him higher beforehand. The tough part is, I do have a lot of these receivers that I like a lot after him, and I really tossed and turned on that. But I think each one of them has their question marks. Xavier Worthy, he's got the speed, the athleticism. Can he turn it to be an all-around receiver and actually have the production, or is he just a speed guy? With Lab McConkey, the traits are there. Looks like he could be looks like I would think mostly a slot receiver, has great separation and great route running. But, we've seen guys like Cooper Kupp, even Hunter Renfrow come out of nowhere and do really well. But can Lab McConkey be a consistent player year in and year out and be a high performer? Don't know. And Adonai Mitchell, he's an interesting one where he did great as far as his athleticism, but then the drills, he looked absolutely sloppy. So and he was somewhat productive, but I don't think he was unbelievably productive. So I don't know what to think about him either. So all of them have question marks. So to me, landing spot's going to matter a lot for Penix, but I do think that he has proven himself to be a winner, and I find him intriguing.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like you said, it's a big if he's going to get a clean pocket in the NFL. And I'm concerned with him in reading the defenses as well. He's not a guy that had to do a lot of progression stuff. They do spread. I know people breaking down the tape during the national championship games. There was times where his first read should have been seam routes for a big play. Instead, he just took a safe throw to the outside, and it was a quick out. But the fields in the college is actually wider, so it's easier to hit those quick outs as well. So I'm a little concerned about him going through projections and transitioning to an NFL style offense as well. But I think he's got the potential to be a guy like, Tua. Tua's not really mobile, but can dice you up in the right system. So he's got to go to the right team that's going to, be like a Mike McDaniel for him. And
wrong coach, Joe.
Huh?
Wrong coach, Joe.
I said McDaniel.
You said Mike McDonald at first.
Right, I corrected myself though.
I know, good work.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel. He needs that type of Miami Dolphins similar to Tua and people to keep him clean. I just don't know if he's going to go to that situation.
Yeah, so we both thought Worthy was worthy. See what I did there of this tier. What made you not have him higher?
I think part of it is just those concerns, as you mentioned. Is this guy another one of those fast receivers that just blow you away at the 40-yard combine and then kind of go away? Henry Ruggs comes to mind. Obviously, he had some legal issues, but that being said, that's or here or there.
John Ross too.
John Ross as well. Those type of guys. But I think he was more productive in college than those guys. So I think he has the chance. I just think that scares me a little bit, just because you, as the Mark Schillers would say, win the underwear Olympics and run the fastest 40 time. That doesn't mean you're going to be a great NFL wide receiver.
You watch, if he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, so people are going to go nuts for him.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100%. If he goes to the Chiefs, people are going to go bananas for this guy.
And he could be there, honestly. I don't know how high he's going to go. He's going to be one of the biggest wild cards of the draft.
Yeah, I think it all depends on when is the run on receivers in this draft, and who wants a receiver and is afraid of missing out, and that'll kind of depend. Who's available at certain times.
Yeah, you had Troy Franklin here amongst, I think, some really good players. I'm actually surprised to see him ahead of Lab McConkey for you. You just feel that his athletic profile, you just have hope in him.
Yeah, you know, I that was a tough one. You know how much I like Lad McConkey, and I think he's just a really polished route runner. But like you kind of mentioned, I expect him to be out of the slot where Franklin, he's gonna be an outside receiver. I think he's really interesting and has a good amount of potential. So I just decided to put him slightly higher, especially, I think he has good route running, and then he's also got that deep speed too that can be that ceiling player for you.
All right, Joe, let's head over to tier 2. Who do you got in tier 2?
All right. In tier 2 at number 10, I've got J.J. McCarthy. At 9, I've got Adonai Mitchell. 8, Brian Thomas Jr. 7, Brock Bowers. 6, Malik Neighbors. And 5, Rome Odunze.
Interesting. So for number 8, I've got Brian Thomas Jr., 7, Jaden Daniels, 6, Drake May, 5, Brock Bowers, and 4, Roma Dunze. I'm a little surprised, though I probably shouldn't be. J.J. McCarthy is in the top 10, the former Michigan man. What's your thought process? You feel that you're buying into the hype of J.J. McCarthy right now, as most NFL GMs are, supposedly.
I mean, I could care less about the hype. This guy is the most NFL-ready quarterback in this draft class, period. He played in a pro-style offense at Michigan, and he knows how to work the line of scrimmage because Jim Harbaugh asked him to. He knows how to read progressions, and he's still got room to grow. And I think that's what's interesting. And I mean, he's got way more athletic ability than Michael Penix, who you have at 9. And he can give you the rushing ability, but he also can throw. I know a bunch of people are knocking him because of the stats. I don't care about the stats that he had in Michigan because he just wasn't asked to throw that much. And, I think he's going to show the NFL that he can really play.
How is that not a problem, though? Because you didn't see it in college. There has to be some sort of projection that he will, and there's no guarantee that he does.
There is no guarantee that he does, but there's no guarantee in any of these guys. Like I said, he's the most NFL-ready quarterback in this draft class. Just like I told you, C.J. Stroud was the most NFL quarterback last year, and he proved that. So
you think that J.J. McCarthy will be a day one starter? You said that he needs time to develop into that because he wasn't relied upon at Michigan to be the guy to throw. It was all Corum.
I get that. That's the offense. He wasn't asked to. I mean, but that doesn't mean that he can't. I mean, yeah. I mean, he can. It's in there, and like I said, he's able to read the defenses. He knows how to shift the line protections. I think whoever drafts him he'll be the day one starter for sure.
Wow. I don't have as much confidence as you do, but as far as Jaden Daniels goes, because I know you gave me a little bit of like a wow when I said his name.
Yeah.
If I had to come up with some sort of comparison on the guy, it sort of reminds me a little bit of RG3. In Baylor, he came out of nowhere. Ended up obviously becoming the number 2 pick overall, won the Heisman. Obviously, we saw he wasn't able to stay healthy, got a number of injuries, and then he just got fizzled out of the league. Jaden Daniels, there's no question about it, had an incredible year last year. I am wondering if that was an anomaly, and I'm not so sure. I understand from a fantasy perspective he's going to be able to run and have that athleticism, but to me, I think that I don't think he's a tier 1 player. I just don't. I think there's just too much risk with him and Drake May. I think Drake May, he's got a lot of potential, but he's a project. I don't know if you're going to see Drake May. You're not going to see any of these quarterbacks outside, in my view, which we haven't talked about Caleb Williams. I don't see any of these quarterbacks doing even near remotely what C.J. Stroud did. You'd be hoping that Drake May does something more like Will Levis or Bryce Young. I just don't see Jaden Daniels maybe in the middle because he can run the ball. But to me, I don't think in a superflex format, I recognize the importance of it, But some of these guys that we're talking about, like Brock Bowers, even Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, these guys are blue chip players. Am I really going to pass on a blue chip player for some questionable quarterbacks who, in my view, a lot of times from a draft perspective, there's just so much hype. I gotta have the next quarterback. I have the next quarterback. Well, if we listened to that a few years ago, you were happy if you got Mac Jones or Justin Fields or Trey Lance. And how are you doing now? Or Zach Wilson? How would you be doing now if you had Zach Wilson? Not all these guys are going to pan out.
No, yeah, no, they're not. But I mean, just because they aren't necessarily going to pan out for their teams doesn't mean they can't be relevant for your fantasy team.
Sure, but I think that you are then passing on blue chip players like Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. Like, I recognize it's a super flex league, but I mean, these guys are blue chip guys. These are some of the best receivers we've seen come out in quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing, I mean, I guess the counterpoint would be, I mean, this is also a deep wide receiver class, where if you take a quarterback early, it affords you to be able to get a decent wide receiver late, which in a lot of drafts you can't get either.
Well, I mean, it's your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
In my view, you have some can't miss prospects. Bowers at the tight end position. There's 3 receivers. These guys are a can't miss, in my view. Maybe, I mean, you never know. Some players end up getting be bust, but I mean, I feel a pretty high level of confidence, as most people do. These guys are going to be very, very good players.
Well, I think it's just the difference between the positions and how easily it's to transition to the NFL. Wide receivers, running backs are a much easier transition to the NFL than quarterbacks. So I think that's why the bust rate is so different for the quarterback position.
You and I both agree on Brian Thomas. I'm a big fan of his. He did really well, kind of overshadowed by what Xavier Worthy did.
Yeah.
Also, you and I have Bowers in this tier. I will ask you a little bit here about, well, 2 things. One, you believe Mitchell is in a tier similar to Neighbors and the Dunze, so I want to hear about that. And it seems like you're picking up on the trend. It seems like a lot of GMs or Mel Kipers of the world and Daniel Jeremiah, you're starting to see Roma Dunze ahead of Malik Neighbors, so you're starting to believe that as well.
Yeah, as far as Malik Neighbors goes and Dunze, I just think I think a Dunze is potentially just a more polished guy, and I like his size. He's 6'3" compared to the 6 foot Malik Neighbors. Now, I think Malik Neighbors has a lot of potential. I just think he's got to go to that right system as well that's going to be able to utilize him after the catch, and I think that's where he's the most lethal. I think he's another Deebo Samuel type of guy with his physicality and ability to do the run after the catch as well. So that's kind of but as far as all around receiver, I think Odunze, I give him the slight edge.
What about Mitchell? You feel Mitchell is in the same caliber of Neighbors and Odunze, being that he's in this tier?
Potentially. I mean, obviously, I have him lower, so like.
Right, but he's still in tier 2.
I get that I got him in tier 2, yes, but at the same time, like
I'm harping on you, Joe. Yeah, I'm not easy to get a pass on this one.
I know. I mean, Adonai Mitchell, I like him. I think he's a talented receiver. I mean, sure, you could argue that I shouldn't have him in the same tier as these guys, but
that's my argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair argument, but at the end of the day, I do have these guys still ahead of him, but just where the tier broke, I just felt like I've got my top 4 people in tier 1, and this is just kind of where the tier broke.
All right, so what do we got in tier 1?
All right, Steve. In tier 1 at number 4, I've got Caleb Williams. Number 3, I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. Number 2, Drake May. And at number 1, Jaden Daniels.
Oh, my. All right, number 3, I've got Malik Neighbors, 2, Marvin Harrison Jr., and 1, Caleb Williams. So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, I wasn't too surprised about Jaden Daniels. I thought, I know based on his athleticism, I knew you were going to have him as 1 based on our conversation, based on our previous video of a way too early Superflex mock draft. But I'm a little surprised by Drake May. Talk to me why you feel Drake May is better than Caleb and Marvin Harrison. That shocks me.
Well, look at who's been the best dynasty quarterback. You'd probably say scoring wise and everything with the rushing ability and the passing touchdowns, it's Josh Allen. I think Drake May's ceiling is potentially another Josh Allen type. We saw it at North Carolina. He gets a ton of rushing touchdowns. He rushes for a lot of yards, so that rushing ability puts him up. And if you think about it, I mean, if Caleb Williams is going to truly be the Patrick Mahomes type, like Patrick Mahomes, for as good as he is in the NFL, he's not always the top quarterback in fantasy. And a lot of times Josh Allen outscores him in fantasy, and you'd rather have Josh Allen in fantasy than Patrick Mahomes. So that's kind of my thought process as to why I have those guys up over Caleb Williams.
I mean, that's a good logic. I mean, you just feel. I mean, I feel Drake May has a bigger bust potential than Caleb Williams.
He does. I mean, I'm not saying it's a smash pick. I'm not going to say. I mean, it's a risk, but I think Caleb Williams is a risk too. You know how I feel about Caleb Williams, man. I don't think this guy is a home run pick at all. And I don't think he's really going to be Patrick Mahomes. There is only one Patrick Mahomes. I really wish people would stop this stupid comparison stuff, because just let Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes. There's only one of them. And I don't, Caleb Williams, just because he's going to do some different things that are like him, he's not Patrick Mahomes.
What do you mean, Joe? Don't you want a clone of Patrick Mahomes for the Broncos?
I mean, yeah, there's 31 other teams that would love a Patrick Mahomes clone. But the other point is that not everyone's got Andy Reid to direct him as well.
Oh,
we clone Big Red too, because that's also part of it. And there's different quarterback skill sets that fit different teams. So,
yeah, to me, I've got Caleb one. I'm buying into the hype. I believe that I think that his improvisation in the pocket and the way he's able to, and the stats prove it. It's not just these flashy plays that he makes. He won a Heisman himself. He was able to perform at a very high level. So I know you feel that if the team was so talented, why didn't he perform better? I understand that. And my biggest concern with him is his record against top 25 teams. That's the thing that scares me the most. And that's that has me wavering. I could see that as he could be a bust. I mean, he's getting a ton of love right now. It'll be interesting where he goes. It's likely the Bears, but now you're hearing rumors that the Bears might trade keep the pick, trade. Oh boy, I'm all lost. They're going to keep Fields and trade the pick. I don't know how much you're buying that hype.
I honestly think that's what the Bears should do. I think they'd be better off because
they'll get a haul. They'll get an absolute haul.
That's what I mean. They'll get an absolute haul, and the locker room and the players are staying behind Justin Fields. And if they feel like they can get some improvement out of Justin Fields and get him some additional weapons, I mean, they could trade back a couple of picks, still get Marvin Harrison Jr. to help Justin Fields, and then they also have a pick at 9 still, which they could use to get an edge rusher that they need as well, something of that nature. But I just think the haul and the picks that you could get, and if you're not totally convinced Caleb is your guy and that's the guy you want for the future, you shouldn't take him, and you should get the future draft capital.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. He's handled that process in a very different way than we've seen, it's really hard to know. I mean, he said it was like he didn't want to play for the Bears, but now he's like, well, I'd be happy to play for the Bears. But more, he's like, I want to be on the team. Whoever drafts me won, which is kind of cryptic. So I don't know what to make of it.
Part of it is I don't know how much of it is actually Caleb saying this versus like his dad or his quote unquote team is putting this stuff out there. Like, I don't know if these things are actually coming from Caleb and out of his mouth. And I think that's part of the problem, but that's also something else you got to deal with if you take him potentially.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their own, people that they rely on, their family, their friends, to make, the best decisions in their life. So, no different than any of us, but it could obviously cause some headaches for some NFL teams. I think Neighbors is worthy. I'll just mention this real quick. I think Neighbors is worthy of tier 1. I think his yard after the catch ability is elite. I thought about putting Roma Dunze in this tier 1 too. It's very close. It's very close to me. I still put Neighbors ahead of a Dunze, but I don't I don't think it's horrible if you put Odunze over him. But you and I both believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is the top receiver.
Yeah. He's still the wide receiver one in this class for me, 100%.
Well, and you don't see a player like him as far as his stature and his ability, his stats. I mean, in my view, we haven't really, maybe this is high praise. I don't think we've seen a receiver like this since Calvin Johnson. Would you say that's accurate? Or maybe Julio, I guess Julio Jones maybe would be a similar.
Yeah, because I don't think I think Calvin Johnson would be potentially heavier than him.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But still, 6'3". I think, you think of like you said, a Julio, AJ Green type even.
Yeah.
So that big body guy that can run and he's going to go up and get those contested catches. I feel like wide receivers have been getting smaller. So seeing some of these bigger, taller guys out there, I think is going to be really interesting.
So that does it for our top 24 rookie rankings with tiers. You got mine, you got Joe's, we put it all out there for you to react to. Put in the comments below, what are your thoughts? Who do we have right? Who do we have wrong? What's your opinion? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Coming up next week, we got free agency. We're excited to talk about it. We're going to be giving you our reactions every day of what happens. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.